Good evening, everyone. So I am really deeply honored and humbled to be here on the stage with people who have been some of the staunchest allies of the communities that I come from, of Muslim communities, of Palestinian communities, of Arab American communities. We've spent a lot of time on the front lines together protecting each other, but also protecting other marginalized communities, and I'm so grateful to be on the same stage with you again tonight. So apparently, I'm the biggest problem for the Jewish community. I am like the existential threat, apparently. And it really is very I'm confused, literally, every day. And I'm confused by people who actually don't know who I am, have never sat on a table with me, and for sure have never been anywhere near a social justice movement in these United States of America. And if they ever have been in space with me, including recently at the Left Forum for anyone who is here, one of the things I focused on at the Left Forum is I said to folks in the room, progressive folks, all pretty much down, I said to them, oftentimes when we come into conversation together, we always look at the ills of the things or the exterior to our progressive movement. What we really need to be doing is looking at the ills within the movement that we are a part of, which is not exclusive to anti-Semitism or to Islamophobia or to homophobia or to transphobia. My role here tonight was I was coming to speak to a progressive audience as a progressive leader in the progressive movement to say that we cannot dismantle anti-black racism, Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia, every phobia and ism without also dismantling anti-Semitism. That intersectionality, as an intersectional movement organizer, and I've been doing intersectionality way before last year when everybody thought it was cool to talk about intersectionality. Thank you to Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw for giving us that term. Intersectionality is not about black people and white people organizing together or Jews and Muslims organizing together. That's not what intersectionality is. Intersectionality is all of us organizing at the intersections of oppression and seeing oppression connected. So anti-Semitism is one branch on a larger tree of racism. So you can't just address one branch. You got to address all the branches together so we can get to the root of the problem. Apparently, the critics say, well, why are you all having a conversation about anti-Semitism? You're not experts in anti-Semitism and in Jewish communities. Well, first of all these people up here are Jews, if you didn't know. And I'm the resident non-Jew on this panel. And what I think is so ludicrous about that, which has basically been the argument for pretty much the 199 plus op-eds that are out there, because apparently people in the opposition have more times to write op-eds about us than about the administration, but that's okay. Or healthcare or immigrant rights or let's pass the DREAM Act maybe, but anyway, I digress. Apparently, it just really, like, I'm just dumbfounded. It's kind of like saying we all got to be critical race theorists to say Black Lives Matter or to talk about combating anti-black racism, or saying you have to be a Muslim or an expert in Islam to want to combat Islamophobia. We would never say that about any other form of oppression. So why do we want to frame this conversation that only Jews or those who are experts in anti-Semitism can, in fact, want to combat anti-Semitism? That's like 99% of us are going to be like, guess we don't qualify, so we're not going to combat anti-Semitism. It's actually a disservice to Jews to try to frame this conversation in this way. Just in case it's not clear, I am unapologetically Palestinian American and will always be unapologetically Palestinian American. I'm also unapologetically Muslim American. And guess what? I'm also a very staunch supporter of the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. Now, you can tell me if I'm crazy. What other way am I supposed to be as a Palestinian American? What other positions do people expect me to have as a Palestinian American who's a daughter of immigrants who lived under military occupation and still has family in Palestine who live under military occupation? I should be expected to have the views that I hold. And the fact that people want to frame the way that I choose to show up in a movement They are denying my existence and my right to be an unapologetic Palestinian American who is not only a critic of the state of Israel, but I'm sure damn well a critic of the United States of America, and I always have been, even under the Obama administration. Now, what I'm here to say is this. I have always been an ally to Jewish communities. And one of the things that I've learned as a Muslim who belongs to a group of 1.8 billion people, that we ain't actually all the same. And I'm pretty sure that's the same in the Jewish community. So the confusion is, and I hope we're clarifying it for you tonight, that the Jewish community is also not a monolith. Not every single Jewish person that I've met sees their liberation or their Jewishness connected to the state of Israel. So the framing of this idea that in the progressive movement, somehow this imposition that we have to have is that all Jews, Israel, is inaccurate. It's false. The other thing that I want to say too is that if you want me to listen to what you have to say, if you want the progressive movement to be open-minded and hear the different arguments about how Zionism isn't all the same and not all Zionists are the same, and there's a lot of that conversation happening, what if you just showed up to the movement? What if it was okay to show up to a social justice movement and say, you know what, this is not about me. Let me show up and work for Black lives or undocumented immigrants. Let me roll up my sleeves for folks who are being impacted right now in this moment in such vicious ways. And guess what happens after you show up without putting conditions on your allyship and solidarity? Guess what happens? Eventually someone turns to you and says, who are you? Where did you come from? What is your story? That is what happens to me in the social justice movements. I have never showed up at a table and people who work with me on criminal justice reform, immigrant rights, healthcare access, you name it. I have never showed up to a table and said, before I sit down, raise your hand if you believe in the liberation of the Palestinian people. Raise your hand if you believe in BDS. That never happens because that's not how the movement works. The movement is a place to build transformative relationships. It's an opportunity for you to show up, give your all to another marginalized community, and by nature, people reciprocate that solidarity, people humanize you, and people ask you, what can I do for you? What are you being impacted by? Because I want to show up for you. So what I hope that you get from this conversation is this. I don't care who you are, Jewish or not Jewish, we all must commit to dismantling anti-Semitism. And that the existential threat resides in the White House, in the highest offices of these lands. And if what you're reading all day long, morning and night in the Jewish media is that Linda Sarsour and Minister Farrakhan are the existential threat to the Jewish community, something really bad's going to happen and we're going to miss the mark on it. So what I say to all of you here is that I am not looking for any approval from Zionists, right-wing Zionists, from Jewish Americans, from not Jewish Americans. I don't need anybody to invite me to the movement to dismantle anti-Semitism. I come here because I believe in it and it's the right thing to do for all of us. And guess what else is going to happen? By default, even our opposition is going to benefit from the solidarity and the work that we do here. What they don't know is eventually they will be protected based on the work that we will do to risk our lives to protect the most marginalized people in this country, including our Jewish sisters and brothers. Thank you.